Hello, I'm Dave Gardy for Cybersecurity TV from another in a series of programs on the Squirrel Compliancy Solutions TV series. Joining us now via Zoom from North Carolina is Dave Lundgren, Director of Sales for DoD Global for Squirrel Compliancy Solutions. Dave, thanks for joining us.
Hey Dave, good morning. Thanks for having me again.
Today we're going to discuss the digital transformation of the network STIG process, something that's of a great interest. What is it meant by the word digital transformation, Dave?
Yeah, so basically this is taking our traditional old manual processes, right? Manpower intensive, paper-based life cycle a lot of times in that regard, and turning them into a fast, efficient, digitized process. Think about like when we transformed paper mail into email and, we started doing books, they turned into online web content. And a big one that we use day to day is we no longer keep maps in our vehicles, right? In our cars, we leverage vehicle navigation systems such as Google and Waze.
For our viewers, can you recap what the STIG is and specifically what it applies to?
Yeah, so the STIG is a DoD acronym for policies and guidance that are published by DISA, right? And this stands for Security Technical Implementation Guide. Everybody across the DoD for the last 25 years now have just referred to them as the STIGs. And what these are technical security controls that are necessary and to be applied to defend our DoD networks and systems, right? So think about all that infrastructure. It's across the board. Every service branch has to adhere to it. Something to note is that DISA STIG is the only objective-based metric that's used to measure compliance across the DoD. Good way to think of this is much like strict house rules, right? That when applied, they help secure your home or your vehicle. Close and lock your windows and doors, that kind of a thing. Enhancements that might additionally be thought of from automation would be to think of your Ring camera system that you have at home nowadays, right? It's going to allow you to view and see what's going on, right, at your home, maybe inspect and re-audit mentally. Did I lock my doors? Did I close my garage? And also be alerted directly to your phone or your mobile device that you kind of carry around on a day-to-day basis now.
Now, what would be some of the house rules that you'd apply towards something as large as the globally kept and reaching DoD network?
Yeah, so Squirrel Compliancy Solutions, we're focused on STIGs for network equipment and infrastructure. And I'll reference these policy types that are traditionally used across the board. So these are going to tend to be a handful of policies like NDM, network device management. This is applied basically to every network device across the board. Layer 2, that's going to be things like a switch, right? And every single switch port, whether it's isolated one-off or across a data center. Routers even, VPN, the ALG, and also the IDPS or intrusion detection prevention systems, right? They all have these STIG policies with a series of rules that need to be applied towards them. Outside of the reference to CVEs, these are known as common vulnerabilities and exposures. The STIGs are focused on, like I said, technical security controls. These are based on how you configure and apply security posture across your actual enterprise and environment. These would be configurations towards different management, control, and data planes of network equipment across the enterprise.
Could you be a little more specific on the actual process that is involved with how these STIGs are employed and enforced?
So STIG objectives include things such as asset inventory and STIG policy selection, a very granular configuration checks against these technical controls, right? These are also all in tune and cover a large span of different NIST control families. When we talk about the reference to 800 TAC 53 or 171, 172, et cetera, across the board. So an example of what is applied towards the network, maybe like a switch, roughly a network switch has or includes about 256 plus or minus configuration checks that align across the NDM, the layer 2, and maybe even the router policies for a specific vendor such as Cisco or Juniper in that case, right? So this includes verifying and validating that every one of these technical security controls are met, but to top it off, they're also documented as passing or failing every check. If the check fails to pass, it's got to be mitigated in some way. So this might be remediation. And hopefully when you apply that remediation, it doesn't break the network or take down that connectivity a lot of times that occurs, right? Or it needs to be written up if it can't be remediated as a risk acceptance waiver or a POAM, a plan of action to perform that remediation and how long it's going to take for you to get to there, right? Traditionally, the manual method of this is roughly 45 minutes per device. Now multiply that times millions of devices across all the DoD branches, right? This is going to take an army of manpower across the DoD and millions of man hours to complete.
Interesting. Now, how is Squirrel helping with the digital transformation in the network STIG process?
So Squirrel Defender is automating the actual audit process, the checklist artifact generation, the remediation of those findings, and even the ConMon or continuous monitoring for configuration drift, right? To determine if maybe something was out of compliance or overlooked, or even maybe malicious in intent, right? Where somebody accidentally made a change and it wasn't documented or approved. Through this automation, our customers are typically recognizing about a 99% reduction in time to complete these tasks, right? It's a pretty long, arduous process. As I said, it's 45 minutes per device, and it has to be done on a quarterly basis when they release those things. Everybody goes out there and checks it, or even out of cycle. And for a lot of customers, they have the CORA, which is that cyber operational readiness assessment that goes on across the DoD. Now, based on our performance metrics, our knowledge of the process, we can help the DoD save billions of dollars per year in this ongoing activity alone.
Can you go to some description on how the Squirrel Defender platform performs audits?
That's a great question. So we like to reference that, unsexy, boring compliance tasks are now somewhat gamified through Defender, right? More like a Mad Libs exercise for these operators. They don't have to worry about keeping up with the code or developing from a DevSecOps team perspective, like what are those sticks, how are they being applied for the different vendors. We're performing all that for them, and they simply just enable or disable a particular rule. Auditors simply build out an audit. They define the assets that they want to target for those audits, and then they select the appropriate STIG policies, right? Once that audit is established, these operators can spend a little bit of time inputting their site-specific inputs into a newly built audit that outlines every STIG ID to determine if it's applicable or not.
What distinguishes the Squirrel Defender platform from other industry tools?
Unlike the rest of industry, we're not handing you an oven and a pile of ingredients and saying, hey, go figure out a recipe on how to bake your own pizza for your house or to scale for your neighborhood and even your town at that point, right? So, you've heard us say this before. Defender comes with what's called curated rules, right? So we perform that curation. Nobody else in the industry actually is committed to doing this. They're happy to give you a tool and say, okay, go forth and do your best. We create and curate those DISA STIG policies within the platform. They all break down to the STIG IDs of these different rules and are mapped to what we call Defender rules, where we may even do some kind of deduplication to pick up on efficiencies and speeds in that case.
Interesting. Now, does the digital transformation affect the role of cybersecurity professionals?
Definitely. So instead of being a bunch of checklist clerks, right, because that's basically what you're being told to do, because again, compliancy isn't sexy. Cybersecurity professionals, they become analysts and defenders that are able to actually focus now that they have time to solve real security problems instead of filling out all these different forms or those reporting efforts that are consistently going on.
Have you seen any challenges this year where digital transformation could actually aid the government?
Honestly, it could be dangerous, but I'll call out the elephant in the room for 2025. It's DOGE, right? This affected every aspect of manpower across the U.S. government. Never before seen like this, right? Everything from manpower and budget cuts that are causing the loss of technical expertise and manpower, and in a lot of cases, the manpower that's actually defending our nation outside of our active duty personnel, right? And when you think about it, if you go out there and you check it out, the Doge tally through their site currently states that they're at a $205 billion savings now. Remember what I called out before? We can save billions per year to the DoD by leveraging Squirrel Defender, ultimately aiding the government in recapturing funding resources in both CapEx and OpEx investments used in defending both the DoD and the gig.
Are there any large enterprise programs on the radar this year that could benefit from leveraging Squirrel Defender?
Yeah. So currently, what we're watching, there was a handful of awards for multiple task orders for the Air Force's BIM contract. This is the Base Infrastructure Modernization Effort. Now, this is a 10-year long contract, $12.5 billion contract value with over 25 different prime contract holders, right? The focus is modernizing network infrastructure, specifically across the board for layer 2, layer 3 route switch and everything that's being used as the backbone of the Air Force at a base level or enterprise level. The digital transformation of the stick process is definitely applicable. With a low swag of 500,000 network devices across the Air Force, I know that's low, Defender can save the Air Force roughly $1.5 billion per year in the automation of this process.
Are there any new features and capabilities that you're looking to announce?
Absolutely. So I go back to when I supported the Navy back 20 years ago. IPv6, there was a transition plan for it put out in 2006. It's been almost 20 years now. So the mandate for IPv6 was, I'll say recently, but announced last December. We're starting to see customers already selectively being assigned their IPv6 address space. And we want to ensure that customers are prepared to support DoD compliance operations for IPv6. So mid-September, we're going to be announcing our next MR release with full IPv6 support for both the Defender platform and downstream network elements.
If you had to sum it up, what makes Squirrel Defender's digital transformation of this network SIG process so important?
Well, easy. Squirrel Defender isn't just automating sticks, right? I believe it's turning compliance from a burden into a battle advantage for our warfighters and operators defending the DoD and the gig today.
Well, Dave, we thank you for the time you've taken. We've been speaking via Zoom with Dave Lundgren, Director of Sales for DoD Global for Squirrel Compliancy Solutions. Thanks for joining us, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
I'm Dave Gardy for Cybersecurity TV from our studios here near Washington, D.C. for another in the series of Squirrel Compliancy Solutions TV programs. Thanks for watching.